The Tennessee sun beat down on the rolling hills, painting the late August afternoon in shades of gold and amber. A gentle breeze rustled through the tall grass lining the quiet country road, carrying the scent of wildflowers and freshly cut hay. It was the kind of day that begged for a lazy afternoon spent outdoors, and that's exactly what Lucas and Nicole Schner were doing. Lucas, a deputy with the Anderson County Sheriff's Department, was a man of quiet strength. His weathered hands, usually accustomed to handling a service weapon, were now delicately adjusting the carburetor of a well-loved dirt bike. His close-cropped dark hair was speckled with dust, and his blue eyes, usually sharp and alert, were focused with intense concentration on the task at hand. He was a man of few words, but his actions spoke volumes, especially when it came to his wife. Nicole, perched on a nearby overturned bucket, watched him with a smile. Her blonde hair, pulled back in a ponytail, danced in the breeze. She was the extrovert to Lucas's introvert, her bubbly personality a perfect counterpoint to his reserved nature. She worked as a dispatcher, often the calm voice on the other end of the line during emergencies, a job that required both quick thinking and empathy. Today, however, she was simply enjoying the peace and quiet of their day off. "Almost got it," Lucas muttered, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Need any help?" Nicole offered, though she knew he preferred to tinker on his own. This bike, a vintage model he'd painstakingly restored, was his pride and joy. It represented more than just a machine. It was a symbol of his freedom, a reminder of simpler times, a connection to his childhood spent exploring the backroads of Tennessee. "Nah, I'm good," he replied, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. Just a little fine-tuning. Their relationship had been a whirlwind romance. They'd met at a county fair, Lucas drawn to Nicole's infectious laughter, Nicole captivated by his quiet intensity. Their first date had been a hike to a secluded waterfall, a spot that became their place. The proposal had been simple, heartfelt, under a sky full of stars. Their wedding, a small gathering of family and friends, had been filled with love and laughter. They were two pieces of a puzzle that fit perfectly together, a partnership built on mutual respect, unwavering support, and a deep, abiding love. They talked about starting a family, about buying a small farm, about growing old together. Life, at that moment, felt perfect. The sound started subtly, a distant rumble that gradually grew louder. Nicole glanced up, her eyes scanning the empty road. "Sounds like someone's in a hurry," she commented. Lucas, still engrossed in the bike, barely registered her words. He was so close to getting it running perfectly. Just a few more seconds. The rumble grew into a roar, the sound of a powerful engine straining at its limits. Nicole stood up, a knot of unease tightening in her stomach. This wasn't the sound of a regular vehicle. It was the sound of something reckless, something dangerous. "Lucas," she called out, her voice sharper this time. He finally looked up, his eyes widening as he registered the approaching vehicle. It was a Chevrolet Silverado, its chrome grille glinting menacingly in the sunlight, barreling down the road at a terrifying speed. It was weaving erratically, clearly out of control. Time seemed to slow down. Nicole felt a surge of adrenaline, her instincts screaming at her to move, to run. But she was frozen, her gaze locked on the oncoming truck. She saw the driver, a young man, his face contorted in a mixture of panic and intoxication. Lucas reacted in a split second. Years of training, of facing down danger, kicked in. He didn't hesitate. With a powerful shove, he pushed Nicole out of the truck's path. The impact was deafening. The world exploded in a cacophony of crunching metal, shattering glass, and Nicole's piercing scream. She landed hard on the gravel shoulder, the air knocked out of her lungs. Pain shot through her hip, but it was secondary to the horrifying sight before her. The Silverado had slammed into Lucas with brutal force, sending him flying through the air like a rag doll. He landed heavily, his body twisted at an unnatural angle. The bike, his beloved bike, was a mangled wreck. Nicole scrambled to her feet, ignoring the searing pain in her hip. "Lucas! Lucas!" she screamed, her voice hoarse with terror. She stumbled towards him, her heart pounding in her chest. He was lying motionless, his face pale, blood pooling around his head. She knelt beside him, desperately searching for a pulse. It was there, faint and thready, but it was there. "Help! Somebody help!" she cried out, her voice echoing in the sudden silence. The driver of the truck had stumbled out, his face ashen, his eyes wide with shock and fear. He looked at Nicole, at Lucas, and then back at his wrecked vehicle. He seemed to be in a daze, unable to comprehend the devastation he had caused. Nicole pulled out her phone, her hands shaking so badly she could barely dial 911. Her training as a dispatcher kicked in, forcing her to remain calm, to speak clearly, to provide the necessary information. "Accident, County Road 42, 2 injured, 1 unconscious. Please hurry." The wait for the ambulance felt like an eternity. Nicole held Lucas's hand, whispering words of comfort, of love, of hope. She told him to fight, to stay with her. She refused to let him go. She blocked the image, seared into her mind, of his limp form flying from the point of impact. The sirens finally arrived, their wailing a welcome sound in the otherwise desolate landscape. Paramedics rushed to Lucas's side, their movements swift and efficient. They stabilized him, loaded him onto a stretcher, and rushed him to the waiting ambulance. Nicole, her hips screaming in protest, insisted on riding with him. She watched as they worked on him, inserting 4 lines, monitoring his vital signs, their faces grim. The ride to the hospital was a blur of flashing lights and urgent voices. She tried to sound Lucas's name, but no sound escaped. The emergency room was a whirlwind of controlled chaos. Doctors and nurses swarmed around Lucas, their voices hushed but urgent. Nicole was ushered to a separate room, her fractured hip assessed and treated. But her physical pain was nothing compared to the agonizing uncertainty about Lucas's condition. She sat alone in the sterile waiting room, her mind racing. The images of the accident replayed relentlessly in her head. The speeding truck, Lucas's selfless act, the sickening thud, his lifeless body. She clasped her hands together, praying with a fervor she hadn't felt since childhood. A doctor finally approached, his expression grave. "Mrs. Schner?" he asked gently. Nicole nodded, her throat tight with fear. "Your husband has sustained severe head trauma. He's in a coma. We've done a CT scan, and there's significant swelling and bleeding in his brain. We're taking him to surgery now to relieve the pressure. It's a craniotomy. We'll do everything we can, but it's critical." The words hit Nicole like a physical blow. Craniotomy. Critical. The medical terms were familiar, but hearing them applied to Lucas, to her strong, vibrant Lucas, was surreal. She spent the next few hours in a daze, pacing the waiting room, jumping at every sound, her heart leaping with hope and dread each time a doctor or nurse approached. Family and friends began to arrive, offering their support, their prayers, their silent presence a comfort in the overwhelming darkness. Lucas's parents, their faces etched with worry, held Nicole's hands, their shared grief a heavy weight. The surgery was long and agonizing. When the surgeon finally emerged, his face was tired but cautiously optimistic. "We've removed the bone flap to allow the brain to swell. He's stable for now, but the next few days will be crucial. He'll be in the ICU." Nicole was allowed to see him, briefly. He lay in the ICU bed, his head bandaged, tubes and wires connected to various machines that beeped and whirred, monitoring his every breath, his every heartbeat. He looked so fragile, so vulnerable. She gently took his hand, her tears falling onto the crisp white sheets. "Lucas," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. You have to fight. You have to come back to me." Days turned into nights. Nicole stayed by his side, sleeping in a chair next to his bed, refusing to leave the hospital. She talked to him, read to him, played his favorite music, hoping that somehow, somewhere, he could hear her. She updated a blog and social media, partly as therapy, partly to keep their wide circle of friends and family informed. The outpouring of support was overwhelming. Messages flooded in, prayers were offered, and a GoFundMe campaign, started by one of Lucas's colleagues, quickly gained momentum. The generosity of their community, of strangers even, was a testament to the impact Lucas and Nicole had on those around them. It was a lifeline in a sea of despair. The GoFundMe became more than just a financial resource. It became a symbol of hope, a tangible representation of the love and support that surrounded them. Every donation, every message, every shared post fueled Nicole's determination to stay strong, to believe in a miracle. She knew Lucas was a fighter. He had to be. 6 days. 6 agonizing, endless days. Then, on the 7th day, a flicker. A twitch of his fingers. Nicole, who had been holding his hand, her eyes red-rimmed from exhaustion and grief, almost didn't believe it. "Lucas," she whispered, her voice trembling. Another flicker. This time, his eyelids fluttered. "Lucas, can you hear me?" His eyes slowly opened, but they were unfocused, vacant. He didn't seem to recognize her. "Lucas, it's me. It's Nicole." A tear rolled down his cheek. It was a response, a sign of life, a spark of hope. "He's waking up," Nicole cried out, her voice filled with a mixture of relief and disbelief. Nurses rushed to his side, checking his vitals, shining a light into his eyes. The doctor arrived, his expression cautiously optimistic. "It's a good sign, but he's still very fragile. He's been through a lot. He may have cognitive and physical deficits. We'll need to do more tests." The following days were a roller coaster of emotions. Lucas was disoriented, confused. He struggled to speak, his words slurred and difficult to understand. He couldn't move his left side. The extent of the brain damage was still unclear. Nicole, however, was unwavering in her support. She spent every waking hour by his side, encouraging him, helping him with his exercises, celebrating every small victory. The first time he managed to say her name, even though it was barely a whisper, was a moment of pure joy. The physical therapy was grueling. Lucas, a man who had always been physically strong and active, now struggled to lift his arm, to take a step. There were moments of frustration, of anger, of despair. But Nicole was there, his constant cheerleader, his rock. She reminded him of his strength, of his resilience, of their love. Slowly, painstakingly, he began to improve. His speech became clearer, his movements more coordinated. He started to remember things, to recognize people. He still had a long way to go, but he was making progress. He was fighting his way back. The support from the community continued unabated. Visitors streamed in and out of the hospital, bringing flowers, cards, and words of encouragement. The GoFundMe continued to grow, providing a much-needed financial cushion for the mounting medical bills. One day, weeks after he had first woken up, Lucas looked at Nicole, his eyes clear and focused. I remember," he said, his voice still weak but steady. "The truck. I pushed you." Tears welled up in Nicole's eyes. "You saved my life, Lucas," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "I love you," he whispered. "I love you too," she replied, holding his hand tightly. The road ahead was still long and uncertain, but they were together. They had faced the worst, and they had survived. They had each other, and that was all that mattered. They knew, with absolute certainty, that their love was strong enough to overcome any obstacle. The accident had changed their lives forever, but it had also strengthened their bond, deepened their appreciation for each other, and reaffirmed their faith in the power of love and resilience. After 40 long days in the ICU and several more weeks in a rehabilitation facility, Lucas was finally cleared to go home. It was a bittersweet moment. Leaving the hospital meant leaving the safety net of constant medical care, but it also meant returning to a semblance of normalcy to their life together. Their house, however, was no longer the same. Modifications had been made to accommodate Lucas's needs. Ramps, grab bars, a special bed. It was a constant reminder of the accident, of the challenges they still faced. The transition was difficult. Lucas struggled with simple tasks, his left side still weak and uncoordinated. He tired easily, his brain still healing. He had moments of frustration, of anger, of grief for the life he had lost. Nicole, too, was struggling. She was exhausted, both physically and emotionally. She had put her own needs aside for so long, focusing solely on Lucas's recovery. She missed their old life, their carefree days, their spontaneous adventures. But they persevered. They leaned on each other, drawing strength from their love and their shared commitment to rebuilding their lives. They celebrated every small victory. Lucas walking without a cane, cooking a simple meal, remembering a forgotten memory. Lucas eventually returned to the sheriff's department, not as a deputy on patrol, but in a desk job, handling administrative tasks. It wasn't the same, but it was something. It gave him a sense of purpose, a connection to his old life. He found a renewed appreciation and empathy from his experience, connecting with victims of trauma on a deeper level. Nicole, inspired by the outpouring of support they had received, became more involved in the community. She volunteered at the hospital, offering comfort and encouragement to other families facing similar challenges. Their relationship had changed, irrevocably. They were more patient, more understanding, more appreciative of each other. They had learned the fragility of life, the importance of cherishing every moment. They had discovered a strength they never knew they possessed. Years later, sitting on their porch, watching the sunset paint the Tennessee sky in hues of orange and purple, Lucas and Nicole reflected on their journey. "It changed everything," Lucas said, his voice soft. "It did," Nicole agreed, taking his hand. "But it also showed us how much we love each other, how strong we are, how much good there is in the world." They had faced unimaginable adversity, but they had emerged stronger, their love a beacon of hope in the darkness. Their story became a testament to the power of the human spirit, to the resilience of the heart, to the unwavering bond of love. They had learned that life can change in an instant, that tragedy can strike without warning. But they had also learned that even in the face of loss and pain, there is always hope. There is always the possibility of healing, of rebuilding, of finding joy and meaning in a new normal. Their story was a reminder to cherish the small moments, to appreciate the people you love, to never take anything for granted. It was a story of survival, of resilience, of the enduring power of love. It was a story that resonated with people, a story that offered hope and inspiration, a story that reminded everyone that even after the darkest storms, the sun will eventually shine again. Their future wasn't the one they imagined. On that warm summer day, working on a dirt bike, it was better, forged in fire, and tempered with an unbreakable love. They were a team, facing whatever came next, together.